All right, let's dive right into an idea that kind of cuts against everything you've ever been taught about success. You know the drill: hustle, grind, put in the hours. But what if that's exactly the wrong advice? We're going to explore why, in the world we live in today, just working harder isn't the path to getting wealthy. In fact, it might be the very thing holding you back.
And this quote from investor Naval Ravikant, it just nails the core idea for our entire discussion. See, in an age of leverage, and that just means using tech or capital or people to amplify your decisions, your judgment becomes way more valuable than just raw effort. A single good decision can be magnified 1,000 times over, but a bad one can be just as disastrous. So it's the quality of your thinking, not the quantity of hours you punch in, that really truly matters.
So here's the plan. First, we're going to tear down the hustle myth. Then we'll look at the Feynman test for what it means to actually understand something. After that, we'll get into the owner's mindset, discover the power of empty, and finally, we'll wrap up by giving you your judgment toolkit so you can actually put all this stuff into practice.
Right. First up, the hustle myth. Our whole culture just glorifies the grind, doesn't it? The 80-hour work weeks, the idea that you have to burn yourself out to get ahead. But what if that's all just a dangerous solution, one that keeps people incredibly busy but never actually wealthy?
I mean, just think about this super simple example. You could be the hardest working person in a restaurant, right? Pulling double shifts, never taking a single day off. And yeah, you'll earn a wage for sure, but you're not going to build real wealth. The big takeaway here is that effort and reward, they're not directly connected. Raw effort, without the right direction, is basically just spinning your wheels. A whole lot of motion, but you're not actually going anywhere. So if it's not about how hard you work, what is it about? Well, according to the source material, it boils down to these three things. It's about what you decide to work on, the problem you're trying to solve. It's about who you decide to work with, your partners, your team. And it's about when you do it, catching that perfect wave opportunity. Every single one of those is an act of judgment, and they have way more impact on your outcome than how many hours you clock in.
Okay, so if good judgment is the goal, where do you even start? Well, it all begins with clear thinking. And for that, we can learn a ton from the legendary physicist Richard Feynman and his powerful lesson in simplicity.
This quote gets right to the heart of Feynman's whole philosophy. Here's a guy who won a Nobel Prize in physics, but he could explain quantum mechanics in super simple terms. His test for true understanding was basically this: if you can't explain a concept to a freshman in college, you don't really get it yourself. All those fancy words and complex jargon, a lot of the time, it's just a smokescreen for a lack of real understanding. True intelligence is making the complex simple.
So how do we actually build that kind of simple, clear understanding? The key is using what are called mental models. And really, just think of them as a collection of core principles you can use to make sense of the world. They're like these simplified maps that help you understand really complex situations so you can make much, much better decisions. They're kind of like the operating system for your judgment.
So here are a few really powerful mental models to get your toolkit started. You've got evolution, which isn't just about biology. It helps you understand how businesses compete and adapt. Game theory gives you a framework for making decisions when other people's choices affect you. We're about to dive deep into the principal-agent problem, which is huge for understanding incentives. And then there's inversion, a favorite of all the great investors. It's about thinking backward. Instead of asking, how can I succeed, you ask, what could make me fail? And then you just avoid that stuff.
Okay, let's zoom in on that one mental model, because it is absolutely fundamental to understanding how the world actually works. It's the principal-agent problem. And this single idea, I'm telling you, it explains so much, like why things often feel so inefficient, or why people seem to get rewarded for just looking busy instead of actually being effective. This chart lays out the core conflict perfectly. On the left, you've got the principal, that's the owner. They care about the big picture, the final outcome. They take risks, and they have equity, a piece of the pie. Then on the right, you have the agent, the employee. They're paid for their time to complete a specific task, and their main goal, really, is to avoid risk. You see the problem here? Their incentives are fundamentally out of whack. A principal gets paid for their judgment. An agent gets paid for their time.
And this isn't some new concept from business school. This is ancient human wisdom. When Julius Caesar said this thousands of years ago, he was perfectly describing the principal-agent problem. If the outcome is absolutely critical, you, the principal, you got to do it yourself. If you send someone else, an agent, you just have to accept that they will never care as much as you do. It's not because they're bad people, it's just human nature, and it's all driven by incentives.
And this brings us to the crucial takeaway. If you are only ever an agent, just selling your time for a wage, you're trading hours for dollars.
It's a trap, and that trade has a hard limit. To build real financial freedom, you have to become a principal. You need to own equity, a piece of the business, a piece of the upside. That's how your wealth can grow even when you're sleeping. It completely shifts your pay from being about effort to being about judgment.
Okay, so this leads us to a really counterintuitive, almost crazy idea. If judgment is so important, how do we get more of it? The answer isn't to do more or go to more meetings or answer more emails. The answer, surprisingly, is to create space. It's about embracing the power of an empty calendar.
So let me ask you this. Just picture the daily schedule of one of the world's most successful investors. Someone managing billions of dollars. What do you see in your head? Back-to-back meetings, constant phone calls, just a blur of frantic activity from sunrise to sunset?
The reality is that their most important work looks a lot like this. Just empty space. The single most valuable thing a person in that position can do is just think. But our modern work culture makes us feel guilty for not being busy, right? We've totally confused activity with progress. The truth is, if your calendar is packed from morning to night, you literally have no time for the deep, unstructured thought that's required to make high-quality decisions.
Warren Buffett is the ultimate example of this. The guy is famous for spending most of his time just sitting in his office and reading. That's it. He's not frantically trading stocks. He's patiently building his understanding, developing his judgment. And then, when the perfect opportunity finally comes along, he acts, and he acts decisively. His incredible wealth is the result of just a handful of great decisions made over decades, not from thousands of hours of busy work.
Okay, so we've debunked the hustle myth, we've talked about the power of clear thinking, thinking like an owner, and why you need an empty calendar. So now what? Let's get practical. How can you start building your own judgment toolkit like today?
It really boils down to these 3 actionable steps. First, read widely. Read everything. Science, math, philosophy, history. That's how you build that library of mental models in your head. Second, take accountability. Start a project, make a public bet, put some skin in the game. Accountability forces you to think clearly because, well, there are real consequences if you're wrong. And third, and this is a big one, you have to consciously create empty space in your calendar. Schedule time with no agenda, time just to think, and then you have to defend that time ferociously.
So I'll leave you with this one last question to think about. Just take a look at your career, your daily choices, your priorities. Are your actions designed to build a better resume? Collecting titles and skills that look good on paper? Or are they designed to build judgment, to develop a deep, real understanding of how the world works, so you can make better decisions for the long haul? The first path makes you a better agent. The second path, that one makes you a principal. The choice is yours.